stuck in some kind of mode, I think. Wait, let me see. Yeah, I'm stuck full melty mode, so give me half a second, I'll turn it off.
Yep.
Yikes! Okay. Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic. Okay, so you guys said that you wanted to see me pulling apart the melty brain on camera to see what went wrong with it, because as you just saw, it kind of went out of control at the end of the last meet. So together we are going to power this thing up, see if it's still out of control, and then we're going to pull the whole thing apart and see if we can find out what went wrong internally. Now, I've got this up on a block. I've also put the weapon locks back on. I'm going to be very, very careful about the startup procedure here. And I've got safety glasses on as well. So let's try and power this up. Okay, so far so good. So the red light that you're seeing here is indicating that it's not getting a signal from the controller, which is correct. Right now, the controller is completely off. So we'll turn that on now. Make sure everything's where it needs to be. Turn that on. Ah, okay, that is an interesting sign. So the controller is now on. Ah, it's in the wrong mode. That might be why we're not getting anything. Let's put it into the melty mode. Okay, that's everything armed. It is now in the right mode, so it actually drives. Okay, that's good to see. It is responding to the control stick. I'm going to put it into very, very slow melty mode. Let's see. It shouldn't be rearming the ESCs like that. Whoops. I need to go straight into melty mode. Okay, so it's getting control signals. Nothing outwardly seems as though there is an issue with this anymore, despite the fact that last time we powered it up, there was most definitely an issue with this. It could be an interference thing, maybe it's a connection problem. We're definitely getting the right things. Let's just see, while we're melting, I'm just going to turn the controller off and see what happens. Yeah, it fail-safed correctly. Huh. Okay, that is somewhat annoying. I'm going to turn the power of the robot down now. That is somewhat annoying because this means that was a very situational bug and it's going to be a lot harder to actually fix. But for now, I'm going to release these clamps and we're going to pull this thing apart and see what it looks like inside. So we're going to start by taking off the lid. This is literally just held in with some wood screws because it's just a tiny little piece of 2mm thick HDPE. Which would not hold up against any kind of overhead weapon, but thankfully there are none of those in the league currently, so I can just get away with very, very thin top armor. And this kind of got molded into the position it needed to be just by force of screwing these screws in constantly. Because in underneath here, we have all of the electronics and the scariness that is how all of this gets packed. So if we have a zoom down on this, you can see that there is literally no room left inside here. It is just that tight that even one of the weapon ESCs is sitting over top of the battery, which is actually what's causing that bulge in the lid, is that this really needed to sit in down somewhere, but it literally could not. There was no more space in here at all, which is also why we were down at a 3S battery instead of the 4S battery I wanted to be at. Yeah, we were just very, very out of space. So let's get the wiring out. So most things look okay in here. I can't really see anything where there would have been a short or anything that would kind of cause me panic or alarm that would be a like hardware issue causing the kind of erratic behavior that we saw. Especially as the way the code works in this brain board right here is that it cycles through a loop, and every time it does the loop, if it's not getting signals from this boy, then it should stop. Like it should fail safe correctly. So I don't know how that didn't happen. I think I'm going to update the code to put a timer in just to make sure that if we're getting literally nothing out of the receiver at all, or if we're getting like random junk out of the receiver, then it will fail safe again. So I'm gonna add another fail safe procedure. The other thing here, I'm not sure the camera is gonna pick this up, so let's try and zoom down. So on here, there are 3 little pinhole marks on the tape that surround this, which is the receiver to the brain board. So this is not the one for the weapons, this is the one that tells the brain to do the melting and to drive and all of that kind of stuff. And there are 3 little pin marks here which indicate a large amount of pressure was applied at that particular point on those boards. And again, there's a lot of pressure on these things because everything was packed in so tightly. And then of course it was slamming into things at high speed, so things were moving around and jiggling. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure in there. So I'm gonna try and unwrap this and leave this as best I can in this orientation and see what's under these particular pressure marks. Okay, so this could actually be a problem. Here, we've got the pressure marks again on the lower level of tape. And if I peel this back, it reveals 2 very, very important things. It reveals the button that does the binding and also the connection for the actual antenna here. So those being pushed into by other electrical components, because that's what those tiny marks had to have been, was definitely not a good thing. And probably I should have actually hot glued these as well as taped them to kind of stop that from happening. So it's possible that what happened there was that this receiver went into bind mode, maybe. I'm not sure if that is actually possible with this receiver. I might have to do some testing of that off camera. But either way, it's either getting pressure on the bind button or it's getting pressure on the receiver, on the antenna connection. Neither of those is going to be good for this receiver, I would say. So I think I'm going to need to be more careful with my packing in the next build, and also probably more careful with the actual space that I have inside the robot, because yeah, we don't want to have to do this again where the pack is so tight that we're putting pressure on our receiver here, because that is a very, very bad thing. Well, so I'm not super convinced that that's the answer to our little mystery here, but it is a good step in the right direction, and it does mean that the changes I've already made to this design to have it have more space internally for the next version is going to help, at least a little bit. So I'm kind of happy about that, but I also do want to pull this down a little bit further and have a look at some of the things. Like these weapons got hit fairly substantially. I do want to just kind of take everything else apart and see how well that's all held up, but that does mean getting rid of even more electronics out of here and undoing the motors, which will mean I'm gonna have to redo these again when we get to the next version of this. We will be doing another version of the vert melty, just because I kind of like the vert at this point, and I've got an idea on making it better, which a couple of you have talked about, which is making the wheels further in so that the verts hit more and the wheels hit less effectively. I've got a way to do that that will be, I think, the most optimal way to do that. So that is what I'm going to aim for version 2 of this boy. Right, now, oh wow, which way do I go from here? I think I need to take the weapons off next, which I think means I need tools I didn't bring. So that is one of the other things that has to change for version 2. There are lock nuts here that sat inside the frame, and they were very, very difficult to get to. I had to use locking pliers to actually get in there and grab them, and yeah, trying to get like a wrench or anything in on them was just a massive, massive pain. So that needs to be improved and changed for the next version, because I can't keep doing that. That was just ridiculous. These weapons actually probably are not too bad, I think, on the whole. They've got a few chips and gashes in them from various hits from verts, but I think they'll actually be okay. This is the other problem too, is that they're currently running on 8mm skateboard bearings on an 8mm bolt, but of course 8mm bolts aren't exactly 8mm, and there's a bit of play in that. They also weren't Loctited, so there's a little bit of play in all of this. The whole weapon assembly was done fairly hastily, unfortunately, which meant that, yes, they didn't work super well. Yeah, this one, it's actually held up a little bit better. It's got a nice big gap in a tooth down here, but on the whole, most of its damage was actually just cosmetic. So I'm okay with that. I might change these for smaller weapons for the next version, because the next version, I'm probably actually going to put more weight into the chassis again, which means taking weight out of the weapons. But the weapons will be further out, I think, which will mean they're going to spin faster and hit harder. So I guess I'm okay with that. Yeah, all right, let's keep going then. I think the next thing to do is to try and release the next part, which, what is going to be the next part here? It is an interesting little beastie to try and break down. I think if we remove all the bolts from the bottom, that will go some way to helping us kind of release the base plate. Wow, I had put some seriously long screws in that. That was never going to go anywhere. And also I've kind of cramped up my hand trying to get that out now. But we should be able to release the base plate like that. Nice little pop. It does still have the skids on it. The skids held up surprisingly well. In the last couple of iterations of this, I was wearing down skids. So I think the fact that I've made them domed has helped them out a lot in this particular instance. So that's really good. I need to remember that for the next version here. And then finally, I guess we just have the last couple of HDPE pieces in here, and these are all held on with a couple of bolts extra, which shouldn't be too hard to get out again. And then the whole thing should just release from the metal, I think. It should just lift straight up if I'm doing this at all correctly, which is kind of the design intent of this, was that it would just kind of lift without having to put too much effort into it. Of course, trying to get the bolts out around the wheels might be a small problem, but these ones on the weapon sides aren't too bad. I also probably won't take the motors out or anything, because these still feel okay. They still feel good. I'm just going to leave those on because there's no real point in taking those off. There's nothing really wrong with them. Although these weapon motors, the little 1806s, I will swap those out. I've got some better 1806s than these. So the next version will use my better 1806s, because these were a little bit gutless, unfortunately, and didn't really work too well, and they're kind of a bit mismatched, despite the fact that they're from the same factory and they're, you know, supposed to be the same thing. They aren't, because they're cheap 1806s. That is just a thing that happens. All right, we're almost done here. We just need to get the ones out by the wheels, so I'll do that now. And there we go. They did just slide off as soon as those bolts were removed. So that was absolutely perfect. And yeah, I actually kind of like this with the motor on, and well, both the motors on one piece. That is kind of nice. I might even try for version 2 to simplify this arrangement and just make these a more attached unit. But that is probably going to be it for this video. I'm actually pretty happy with this. The amount of internal damage and stuff was basically negligible. I didn't really see anything or find anything in here that would indicate to me that this robot broke itself too hard. The only real issue, I think, was this receiver and having something either hit the bind button or the antenna right at the connection point. I think those did not help. There was also a lot of Wi-Fi and like 24 gigahertz signaling going around at the arena side there. So I think a combination of that and the pressing was what did us in there, unfortunately. So yeah, next version, bigger internal space for componentry. Hopefully that'll let us get back up to the bigger battery. We can then put this thing back together effectively. But again, there were going to be some changes to the shape and the design. And yeah, putting some more weight into the chassis, I think, will just make things that little bit better. Anyway, that is going to be it for today's video. I will see you in the next one for the build of the Vert Melty version 2.